Gather up the kids and the old folks. Shut down the contraptions and dim the lights. Put away your pocket-sized magic lantern shows. Close your eyes and listen. It's time to strike off on the paths less traveled, down dark trails through the hills and hollers, along the riverbanks and into the brush. Hear tales of things forgotten yet told. Join me as we venture into the wild and woolly Ozarks. I'm your native guide and host, Champ Heron.
Hello, gentle people, and welcome back to the wild and woolly Ozarks. Thank you for once again finding your way to our fireside. Pull up a chair and rest yourself. Cheer, I say cheer instead of chair. Trying to teach you all the language. I thought it'd be nice for a change of pace and to delve into some good old-fashioned folklore before we talk more about monsters, robberies, hangings, murders, witches, and the like. If you like our style of journalism about the Ozarks, please subscribe, like, and share. It means a lot and helps us grow the podcast. We appreciate your kind words and support. Also, if you're feeling neighborly, we are picking up some great 5-star reviews on Facebook and among the pods. So, should the spirit move you, please help us out and give us that 5-star review. Thank you kindly. This is an episode from my note pile, and we're going to see how it works, because I have two topics that neither one I felt were long enough to, without being tiresome, to have as a single episode, but they are related, and they all appeared in a series in the Marshfield Mail. So, one of the more fortuitous tasks that's been placed in my path over the last several years was to edit the nostalgia section of the Marshfield Mail. I do this with the aid and assistance of a group of volunteers from the Webster County Historical Society. Without Linda and Carm and Connie and Leslie, we would not have this wonderful addition to the local paper. No, we're not paid. It's just there for the benefit of the community to appreciate their history. And it's my pleasure to work with this group. Naturally, this has led me to many new stories, a lot of which are going to be shared on the podcast. For instance, I would never have found the Clarks Creek Gang had it not been for working with the paper. I would never have found Jack the Quail Hunter Kennedy had it not been for working with the paper. I would not probably have found the links that formed the thesis on Ozark witchcraft and how it traveled across the country had it not been for then searching newspapers.com and finding these other tales, and also documenting a fair amount of stuff that's been left out of the local history. Before I die, I'm going to have that sucker corrected. Well, it was while I was compiling one of these very first nostalgia columns, which we call Looking Back, check it out in the Marshfield Mail, that I ran across a turn of the century, 20th century, that is, where a Madstone was put to use when a local boy from Marshfield, was bitten by a rabid animal. Madstone, you say? Yep. Being familiar with folk medicine and what Vance Randolph had to say about the matter, I decided to dig further, only to find a veritable mania of Madstones, and a whole bunch about white deer. To say I went down a rabbit hole is sort of an understatement. My newspapers.com account has dozens upon dozens of clippings, maybe upwards of 100 on the matter. And so I decided that needed to write about that, and we needed to update the folklore, and also maybe have a broader understanding of what makes things special. When stuff comes to the Ozarks, it's all coming from somewhere. There isn't any base Ozark population that got planted here and grew up, and no, everybody came from somewhere and brought separate parts of their culture. And that's what makes this part of the country so darn interesting. So let's start with Whiteheart of the Ozarks. When an albino deer appeared north of Marshfield a few years ago, folks viewed it as an oddity of nature, not supernatural or otherworldly. This stands in stark contrast to 2 millennia of folk belief. From what I've been able to gather, Native Americans viewed the appearance of a white deer as very good luck and a sign of strength and abundance. However, the reverse were true should it be killed. Some southern tribes, and I've not been able to nail down which ones, I've only been able to find it that southern tribes, and I'm guessing that is after contact, unless there's some documentation otherwise or drawings. But anyway, some southern tribes have legends claiming a white doe is a maiden trapped by a witch in order to separate her from a lover. So the white deer is part of a spell. If we dig a little further yet, we find that the white buck holds a magical place in the mind of mankind. Boy, my prose was bad in those days. Irrespective of time and place, the ancient Celts believed these magical deer were faster and stronger than their mortal counterparts, carrying messages from the underworld. In Celtic legends, pursuit of the mythic white stag, an animal that can never be realized beyond the thrill of the chase, transforms the hunt into a spiritual and moral test. Sounds a little bit like fox hunting in the Ozarks, if you think about it. These legends found a home in Arthurian lore, where these deer often foretold quests. They were apparently common as Arthur and his knights hunted them annually on Easter. Were they pursuing with the white moral cleansing? Were they improving themselves? That's an interesting one to go down right there. I wish I knew more about Arthurian lore. At any rate, let's see, they hunted them on Easter, annually on Easter. During one such hunt, Yvain, Y-V-A-I-N, probably butchered that, pursued the animal relentlessly, almost close enough to touch it for miles, while ignoring his surroundings and becoming hopelessly lost. Boy Scout founder Robert Baden-Powell reflected on this, equating pursuit of Whiteheart to the spirit of scouting. He's quoted as saying, "Hunters of old pursued the miraculous stag not because they expected to kill it, but because it led them in the joy of the chase to a new and fresh adventure." For the record, Baden-Powell did not advocate getting lost. I believe there's manual upon manual reflecting that. English kings perhaps had a more political end in mind. Ignoring the warnings, the king went right ahead and killed the unkillable. If no calamity befell his kingdom and his subjects did not suffer, he would be viewed as powerful and perhaps divinely ordained. To pull off such a feat, or at least mimic the legendary Arthur, was clearly an attempt at image management. This trend continued as Britain Christianized. Whiteheart, as the deer became known, shed its pagan roots and evolved into a symbol of purity, figuring prominently in royal art and heraldry. Richard II capitalized on this, utilizing Whiteheart on his royal badge. The deer in this case wasn't running free, but was now collared by a golden crown fastened to a long chain, representing the king's service to both Christ and his kingdom, emblematic of life, both noble and enslaved. Maybe some of you are more familiar with St. Hubert, the patron saint of hunters and gamekeepers. He experienced his conversion while giving chase on Good Friday, another no-no. The hounds bayed a magnificent white stag, but you remember it's Good Friday, so think about Good Friday imagery. The hounds bayed a magnificent white stag, which Hubert was ready to dispatch. Suddenly, between the antlers, he beheld a silver cross. Hubert fell to his knees as the power of Christ caused the animal to speak. Hubert, unless thou turnest to the Lord and lead a holy life, thou shalt quickly go down into hell. The animal continued, lecturing Hubert on how animals should be treated and ultimately hunted and killed. Today, these traditions live on through the International Order of St. Hubertus, an organization of hunters founded in 1695, who are committed to practicing the sport of hunting in a fair and ethical manner. They could be viewed as the originators of the fair chase doctrine adopted by various fish and game agencies around the world. I don't know what a deer, what Christ would sound like through a deer, so I tried to do it as I thought maybe Peter Cushing would. That's what I felt like doing. But let's get back to the Ozarks and in specifically my hometown, Marshfield, Missouri. This wonderful couple, Don and Sue Tyson, were filled with wonder and joy as they watched a doe give birth to twins near their front porch, one being the usual fawn color, the other snow white. The Tysons watched the little fellow daily until he became accustomed to their presence, this proximity enabling them to document his life through pictures and video. Dale Richardson had seen the animal on multiple occasions, but failed to get a picture. He kind of chuckled and said, "I just got lucky one morning and got a little video." The video he captured soon went viral, drawing the attention of the local press and even getting picked up by the UPI. Soon other pictures began popping up on social media, with many speculating he would pass his genetics on and start a herd of similarly colored animals. I don't think that's how that works, folks. For some time, people with their video app at the ready cruised the roads north of town, hoping to get a glimpse of the otherworldly looking celebrity. If you look online, there's one of him in the snow under some sort of a yard light or a street light, and it's impressive. I'll see if I can find that one and post it with this on Facebook. Go check us out over there. These deer are rare, but not unheard of. According to Francis Skalicki with the Missouri Department of Conservation, who was quoted at the time, 1 in 30,000 sounds like a rare ratio. However, when you have over 1 million deer in Missouri, which we do, that means you're going to have a few albino deer a year. We get reports of them from around the state. Under the game code, they're legal to harvest, the same restrictions and permits applying to all white-tailed deer. In the latter half of 2023, the young buck vanished, not being seen again. Did he succumb to disease? And we had a lot of it in Webster County at various times. Or did he fall to a bullet or arrow? Local rumor had it being poached out of season. The Tysons lament his demise. We talk about him and cannot imagine who took his life and what kind of person would kill something so beautiful. One informant was a tad more blunt and stated, "There's always some asshole around." The excitement on social media and in the press regarding Marshfield's white buck and now its apparent demise stand in stark contrast to what folks believed in the past. Old-time Ozarkers felt a sense of dread, and it's very plain if you read among the writings of Randolph and others. Sightings of white deer in the Ozarks are nothing new. In the early settlement days of Oregon County, locals saw a white buck for years until it was assumed it died of old age. Hunters avoided it, fearing if it were shot, bad luck would descend on the countryside. Maybe a famine or some form of pestilence, too. Sounds like a hard day in Oregon County if you killed it. If anybody has any family legends about that, I'd love to hear them. But let's move on. In March of 1939, near Mincy, Missouri, a similar occurrence was documented by noted Ozark journalist Mary Elizabeth Mankey, longtime columnist for the Taney County Republican. It seems that James Columbus Booth, locally known as Lum, was riding on horseback to do his trading at the Mincy store. Riding past an alfalfa field, he spied a group of deer with what he assumed to be a white goat. Upon closing the distance, he could see it wasn't a goat, but rather a massive white buck. Hardly able to believe his eyes, the aged hunter knew he had seen the fabled stag of pioneer myth and lore. Multiple sightings created quite a stir amongst the community, with Mankey echoing the thoughts of many while penning her column. I cannot overcome the subtle feeling that this may be a token, in other words, an omen or warning. Vance Randolph, writing a few years later, found most of the community, like Mankey, greatly discomfited, but opinions varied as to why. Some agreed that it foretold of ominous things to come. Hitler would invade Poland in little more than 5 months. Several thought it had to do with witches' work. Others thought that it was an indication of disease among deer, and venison will be unwholesome for a full 7 years. I can find no further elaboration on why the venison would be unhealthy, or what particular work the witch is up to, or even what particular disease may have caused the venison to be unhealthy. But maybe someday. So this created a stir amongst all the local papers because there was no one story would go to all the weeklies, and so much was made of the matter that the Springfield Leader, the name at the time, sent Jim Billings out to investigate. His feature article focused more on the people and community of Mincy than the beliefs associated with white deer. When gleaning various news articles, there seems to be a great deal of concern among locals that someone would shoot it in an effort to retrieve the Madstone. Madstone? What's that? Today, the Madstone is an almost forgotten staple of Ozark folk medicine, purportedly endowed with miracle-like power to draw poison from wounds. That's poison for you outlanders. You've got to learn the language here. The name itself is a testimony to the belief that these odd stones, when properly used, could prevent the dreaded hydrophobia. The belief in Madstones, coupled with a fear of needles, caused them to be used longer, even though the Pasteur vaccine had been manufactured, improved, and was generally considered safe. The fears were pretty simple, and in a day when there were few physicians in the hills and fewer options for treatment, a backwoods doctor would arrive to a remote place and likely find some poor devil that was suffering, in many cases almost gone or dying, in a great deal of pain. Liberal doses of morphine were given to calm the patient and give the gathered kinfolks a sense of relief. This led to a notion that the needle was fatal. There is another belief that anything cured by a needle will return to you in your final illness. So there's that. In Marshfield, 130 years ago, John Bollinger, who owned and operated the watermill in the vicinity of Pitts and Burford Street, if you know, you know, had a dog that went mad. According to the Chronicle, that's the Marshfield Chronicle, before it could be killed, it bit several head of cattle, numerous hogs, and a flock of ducks. A great loss at the time for a man of property, utter destitution for someone of more humble means. Maybe for many of us, our first exposure to rabies was at a safe distance. When Atticus Finch shot a mad bird dog in Miss Maudie's front yard, or when old Yeller bid everyone a tearful farewell. These scenes from two memorable films convey the fear stoked in a community by a rabid animal, something we are thankfully removed from by 3 generations. Although one could lose property, as in Mr. Bollinger's case, the great fear that once bitten a person would develop symptoms of the dreaded hydrophobia and die violently insane after a gruesome litany of afflictions was very, very real. Grisly front-page newspaper articles of the time relate men being bitten and then restraining themselves with chains in a smokehouse or to a tree, awaiting the end while horrified family and friends waited from a safe distance for the victim's demise. You thought your Sunday afternoon was rough. The fear was such that many times during a rabies scare, local government would take action. When a rabid animal was reported, folks kept children indoors while men went about armed until the offender was shot. Often curfews were imposed and pets were ordered muzzled and removed indoors as well. Such a thing happened in West Plains in 1896. A rabid animal was discovered and the mayor imposed a curfew on all dogs beginning noon Tuesday. The offending canine and others running loose were shot and killed by local deputies after the deadline. The Howell County News approvingly noted, "An ounce of lead is better than a pound of Madstone." Madstones? Here we go again. What are Madstones? Well, there is some debate on that, but generally speaking, they are a calcium concretion taken from the digestive tract of a deer, although they are reportedly retrieved from other parts of the body. The only consistent factor in these stones working held that the stone to be effective had to be from a white deer or a white stag. But that's not exactly so, because several famous 19th century Madstones claim to be the petrified udder of a white doe, dismissing the digestive tract notion entirely. Enter the legends earlier from the southern tribes. Whether or not the white buck at Mincy, remember back here, carried a madstone or was a token of things to come remains unknown, because it disappeared. Maybe somebody got the madstone. The name itself, Madstone, is a testimony to the belief that these stones, when properly used, could prevent hydrophobia. Such a reputation was unwarranted due to the fact that not everyone bitten develops rabies. It is estimated that as many as 80 to 85% or more never develop the virus, despite the animal being rabid. So Madstones, and you remember you have a scientific age dawning, or what we consider a scientific age, and you have folk belief creeping away into the corners. So here's the thesis. Madstones gained a prominence for healing and curing those who were never infected to begin with. And I would wonder that they always knew if the person died of rabies or hydrophobia. I often wonder how much of that was real. There is some debate, and we're going to go a little broader here than just the Ozarks. There's some debate abroad as to what constitutes a madstone and from where they're derived. Madstones, or by their other name bezoar stones, have been used for centuries in Europe, Africa, and North America. It is said much similarly to how we use them here. We'll get into that in a minute. It is said that Queen Elizabeth I wore one around her neck. Where have they been found? Good Lord, they've been found everywhere. They've been found in mounds of the Mississippian people and in the plunder from the legendary wreck of the Etosha off the Florida Keys. As stated, Madstones are not technically a stone, but rather a calcium concretion or hairball taken from the digestive tract of a large herbivore. Now, as for myself, I have seen Madstones from buffalo, from cows. I don't know if I've ever seen one from a horse. I've seen them purportedly from deer. I'd like to see one that's not old. So if you want to dig through your gut piles, let me know. What do they look like? Well, as for appearance, Madstones can vary. Some are pockmarked like coral or rounded smooth into a ball. Some of the buffalo ones look like cannonballs to me. Other examples are oblong, ranging from finger to egg-shaped. The color is generally light, but many are reported dark colored streaks, red, brown, green. Madstones appear in popular literature as well, most notably Sir Walter Scott's Talisman. Published in the 1820s, it tells the story of a stone recovered from the Middle East during the Crusades. Although the account is fictionalized, the stone is real and in the possession of Sir Simon of the Lee, whose family it has resided for centuries. Scott's novels were widely read and undoubtedly attributed to the rise of Madstones in the United States, heralded with Scottish origins. Many such stones in the Ozarks are heralded as having been taken from animals prior to the owner immigrating, having been in the same family for over 200 years. I find anything over 25 years old gets a convoluted history to it. If you don't believe me, just dig through one of these things. Try to dig through something that's 25 years old. In the Ozarks, it's generally accepted that the stone is taken from the digestive tract of a deer. Vance Randolph in Ozark Magic and Folklore, once again, good old Vance, was told that Madstones are found betwixt the windpipe and the lights, which would mean the thing rested in the upper chest cavity. Among his informants, several insisted that so long as the deer was white, it made no difference in what part of the body the stone was found. So, what about the petrified white udder? You know, they're saying here in the brain, we've got digestive tract, we're also saying in the upper chest cavity. I'd love to talk to somebody who's taken apart a white deer and see if they found anything. Probably not. Many believe a deer with a madstone is very hard to kill, requiring more than one shot. I guess Winchester cut down, literally, on the spiritual and moral quest aspect of pursuing white deer. Once again, if you found one, I'd be interested to send me a picture. I'd love to see it. It is doubtful there is anyone left in the Ozarks who has actually seen a madstone in use, a fact that Randolph himself bemoaned in the late 40s. He went on to write, "If treated soon enough and the stone sticks properly, the patient will never suffer from rabies, even if the dog was mad." In order to use a madstone, there is very little deviation in custom. The point being to get the stone to stick to the wound and thereby draw out the disease, venom, etc. This was done by opening the wound and either applying the stone directly to the wound or more commonly first dipping, soaking, or boiling the stone in hot milk. There seems to be some deviation in custom there. Then applying it. If there is no poison present, it will fail to stick and the patient is sent home. If it does stick, it will adhere until the process is complete. Many who use the stone say they experienced a drawing or a pulling sensation. In some cases, and I quote from the Springfield News Leader, June 23, 1892, green slimy blood and water from the wound soaks through the stone and runs on the floor. To repeat the process, it simply needs to be boiled again in hot milk, which will subsequently turn green as proof that the poison is being removed. It seems the boiling is always after you reapply. It has to be boiled before it can be reapplied, irrespective of how you used the milk beforehand. So, but how long? Well, you would repeat the boiling and the adhering process as many times as the stone would continue to stick. Or the milk, when boiling, fails to turn green. The green is the sign that the poison is being pulled out of the wound. You can, a herbivore, what do they eat? Think about that. What are these things made out of? So there are reports of cases warranting repeated use upwards of a dozen times, but 1 to 3 for several hours at a time seems more common. Madstones transitioned during the 19th century from the community or neighborhood to a service people traveled to use. Local papers reported on this, bringing the peculiar cure to a wider audience. Occasionally, a stone would prove so effective as to develop a regional reputation. People traveled in wagons across non-existent roads and even paid train fare to Springfield to visit such stones. Once again, we return to Vance Randolph, who relates, J.J. Hibbler, veteran real estate dealer, Springfield, Missouri, kept a Madstone in his office for many years. It was famous in the 1890s, and people came from all over southwest Missouri to use it. Mr. Hibbler claimed that brown 2-ounce object was given to him by Jacob Van Dyke, a western mountaineer from Cripple Creek, Colorado. One particular incident gleaned from the Springfield News Leader and Press described the travels of Everett Scott, who rode 25 miles on horseback across Texas County to catch the train at Kabul and then proceed to Springfield to avail himself of Mr. Hibbler's Madstone. Scott had been bitten by a large pet cat which started to act funny, so he shot it, mounted up, and rode out. The stone was applied one afternoon and was stuck the next morning. In a curious clipping from the Marshfield Mail, things got lively in the hamlet of Beach, Missouri. In this case, the culprit wasn't a cat or a dog, but as reported October 9, 1902, George Ray's cow went mad in the morning and was shot in the evening. His little boy drank the milk Friday morning that was milked Thursday evening. His wife had a sore on her hand and was taken to the Madstone in Buffalo immediately. She had milked the cow. There wasn't any follow-up in the ensuing weeks telling how things worked out for Mrs. Ray and her son, hopefully better than for the cow. Such were the vaporings from the Clinton Advocate. Laughable through today's lens, fronting Madstones as a medical necessity that would cure neuralgia, sun pain, sore eyes, bruise, pain in the head, back, or high fever, delirium, poison oak, and bone felon. It might as well have included bad breath, warts, dandruff, and crabgrass. Madstones were many times kept and used by local doctors before and through the early vaccine days. In a retort to this advertisement, Dr. Ed Small of Sedalia made his beliefs known when a pack of hounds he owned went mad. He henceforth issued the ultimate dare, offering $500 on the barrelhead to anyone who would have one of his mad dogs bite them and stand on the Madstone treatment alone. It never says whether he received any takers, but it seems he made his point. While custom dictates Madstones should not be sold but passed from father to son, and no charge should be levied for its use, those possessing them would have an underlying fear they would lose the power to work if these rules are broken. All such fear seemed well abandoned in west central Missouri. And this is kind of a funny story. In a story from the Clinton Eye in 1893, it was reported of 2 children being cured by, it had a name, the Little White Doe Madstone, owned by Dr. J.H. Fry. Now, I believe this is what's referred to that I just read here a few minutes ago. Sensing an opportunity, Dr. Fry sensing an opportunity, it further reads, he would continue selling shares at the usual price of $1 until August 1st, then $5 until September 1st, $10 thereafter. It sounds as if Dr. Fry found a way to monetize his Madstone, maybe create a Madstone HMO and not violate the buying, selling, and charging rule. This evidently went on for years, for in 1911, a man named Griggs sold $1 shares in a Madstone to 50 people in Urick, naming the unknowing Mayor Blatt of Clinton as trustee. The befuddled mayor accepted the stone in charge, however, nothing further was reported on the enterprise, at least that I could find. I would love to hear someone from Clinton talk about these monetized Madstones, or maybe there's one of them sitting in the museum up there. Let us know. Reach out and let us know. I'll share it with the listeners. In the Ozarks proper, I have found no evidence of communities corporately purchasing and administering a Madstone. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. However, we do know they were bought and sold. Lucille Morris Upton's The Good Old Days column from the Springfield Leader and Press, the current name at the time, traced down a story from 1895 of William Lamb, who lives near Northview. Evidently, William was bitten by a cat that was supposed to be afflicted with hydrophobia, went to Springfield last week, and had a Madstone applied. Mrs. Fisher, who resides at the corner of Jefferson and Atlantic, had a Madstone which she claims to be part of the petrified udder of a white deer. She has treated over 100 patients in the last 8 years and never lost one. That's an impressive record. Makes you wonder how many were truly ever infected with anything. 3 years later, Mrs. Fisher ran the following advertisement in Springfield News Leader announcing that the famous Missouri Madstone was for sale. 11 days later, the following notice was published. Notice: Mrs. Alice Fisher's famous Missouri Madstone is now in possession of Mrs. Fred Hoffman, the milk dairy woman. Anyone needing treatment, please call on her. It's funny, in the day before phone numbers and stuff, you just knew who people were. Beyond this initial notice, it seems the Missouri Madstone vanished, as there's no further reference to it surviving in the local press, at least that I could find. I always want to put that caveat out there, because I'd love for you to find it and let me know. Perhaps the power was lost when it was sold. It just got thrown in a box. Don't know. J.J. Hibbler's stone also vanishes about this time. In 1915, Hibbler, now a widower, decided to move out west for his health and sells out a collection of curiosities and relics in his College Street office. I got to tell you, the list of plunder, you can find it in the Springfield paper for the auction bill. It's the dream auction for any collector. For there's just this whole list of big game mounts, Indian artifacts from all over North America. The inventory is impressive. Bunches of Civil War stuff from Wilson's Creek. His famous Madstone, however, not listed in the inventory. Doesn't mean it didn't sell there, it just wasn't listed that I could tell. It would seem with the vaccine being improved and better public health, that the whole of Madstone mania would fade from the scene. But for an entrepreneurial fellow from Barry County named G.G. Carney. That's George Grover Carney? Not sure. It seems Mr. Carney's father, in the post-Civil War years, had a chunk of foundation stone that he used for a Madstone. By all accounts, it was local limestone that had been invaded by moss obtained from a bank on a creek near Jenkins. Even though it wasn't from the digestive tract of an animal, it was handled much the same, being soaked in warm milk and applied to the bite. Many Barry Countians received treatment from B.F. Carney stone, so much that he made duplicates. And I'm making sure I've got the names right here, because there's some confusion if you look in the paper on whose initials are whose, and somebody in Barry County, I would love for you to elaborate on this. Many Barry Countians received treatment from B.F. Carney stone, so much that he made duplicates. His son, G.G. Carney, I think that's George Grover, decided to capitalize on this wonder, patented, manufactured, and sold a round, flat Madstone. It appears to me to be much in the shape of a hockey puck, encircled in what appears to be a hard red rubber or wax ring. The Carney Madstone, or poison instructor, had a booklet of sworn testimonials that stated Carney's Madstone was not only effective in the prevention of hydrophobia, but could be used to effectively treat any bite, ivy poisoning, wounds caused from rusty nails, including blood diseases from handling diseased carcasses of animals. All for the tidy sum of $10. Now, during the bottom of the Depression, accordingly, the family claims, and this is in a news article, Carney could sell upwards of $200 worth of Madstones per day. This is at a time when money was scarce and the whole of the countryside was on the brink of starvation. One would think it ends there, and that's it. No more about Madstones, but it doesn't. It keeps going. I just happened to find an article, strangely enough, in the Springfield News Leader, I guess the final name, article from March of 1986. It seems efforts are underway to manufacture and market Carney's famous Madstone. A grandson of W.A. Carney and some local Barry County residents are using the original molds to manufacture the famous Madstone, this time as a novelty item. We don't expect anybody to actually think they are going to work now. The stone itself we are selling for its historic value. It's something genuinely Ozarks, just like moonshine. You can't make it anywhere else. I would love one, if there's one sitting out there that you don't want. Can anyone elaborate on this enterprise? I'd love to hear from you. It leads me to my final statement. When I have these kinds of podcasts, folk belief can be very, very persistent. I want to thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, give us a like and share it on Facebook amongst the home folks. Be sure to follow us on Facebook for additional content and information. If you're really feeling charitable, please give us a 5-star review. It helps us grow and improve the podcast. We thank you kindly ahead of time. Have you got a story that's too good to keep? We would like to hear it. Drop us a line at WILDN, that's wild letter N, Woolly, W-O-O-L-L-Y, Ozarks, at gmail.com. If you haven't checked out past episodes, there's some dandies in there. We have a Silver Dollar City episode, and if you're my age, younger or older, you're going to remember part of it if you ever went to Silver Dollar City. We also have a great interview with James Owen on his book, The Wicked Among Us, and a talk with Nancy Simpson on her podcast, The Toll. Oh, and don't forget, Michael Lear And he is just released his tour schedule on MSP. Check out our interview with Michael Lear. Be sure to check out his podcast, Show Me Murder. Check out Nancy's podcast, The Toll. Pick up James Matthew Owen's book. And then I'm having Mark Cumming come back. He's written a book, not about Silver Dollar City, although there's some Silver Dollar City parts in it. But he's coming back. What questions do you have for Mark Cumming about Silver Dollar City? Please let us know. I'm going to schedule this a few weeks out, and hopefully we can get some questions for Mark Cumming. So anyway, let's see. What else have we got to do here? Oh, yeah. The new format. Listen to that music. Yep. There is one feller behind it, and that's Paul Hambrick. Friend, producer, and all-around Renaissance man. He keeps the ship righted, pegged together, and running smooth. I'm very thankful to have such a collaborator. By the way, in lack of further legal jargon, the Wild and Woolly Ozarks is a creation of Jared Crawford, the Heron Boys, and myself. Currently, it is owned lock, stock, and barrel by Klein Champion Heron III. Any reproduction is unlawful and just damn rude. Of course, if you act nice and don't appear crazy, chances I'll give you permission. Please follow the rules, lest I have to call out my bald knobber minions. Well, until next time, you all be careful, and boys, if you would, please be good to the tourists. Bye now.